things. So
Good evening. Good evening, everybody. Man, I really gotta, it's the wrong arm. I really gotta do some. The arms, I always like doing tattoos, are kind of yin yang. I try to have them be balanced. And these are not balanced. After this got filled in. See, this video reverses you, and I apologize. So this arm got done, and I like it being filled in, but then it makes this arm look weird. So I'm going to have to do something about this arm soon and fill it in so that they are. Man, I can't believe that after 28 years of talking about tattoos, I can't think of the word. It's a word that denotes balance, and I don't have that word accessible to me at the moment. We'll take it up another time. Okay, welcome everybody. I've got a good podcast tonight. At least I think so. Of course, I guess I should probably withhold judgment until after the podcast, right? I should wait for you maybe to even decide yes or not. But I will tell you this: I have a seedling of a plan, and I think if I water it through this podcast, that it will bloom, it will flower, it will be kind of obvious. But then again, I don't know. Who am I? Who am I to judge? Who am I to judge you, Ken Goldberg? Oh, well, I'm me. I would be a good candidate to judge me. Okay, then. Go ahead with your bad self. Well, I think I will. All right. Hi, Rachel, Chris, Kathy, Rose, and anybody else that's lurking in the shadows. So, hi, Sam. How you doing? Welcome to the podcast. I see we've got some people from all around the country. Nobody from Dallas at the moment. We've got Sam and Rachel are in Arizona. We got Kathy in Florida. Chris is in Indiana. Rose is in Chicago. Ken is in Dallas. This is kind of like, again, it would help if you're going to podcast, Mr. Goldberg, if you could begin to reinstate the vocabulary into your head where it will be accessible. So when you need it, you could actually say the words you're thinking. But in the meantime, they're gone. So let's move along. All right, the music today. I said last week, and I meant it, that I was going, hey, Becky, I was going to do a musical thing around the Moody Blues. Because while I had been preparing a show, I started listening to the Moody Blues, and I thought you can't insert the Moody Blues into a musical format that is occupied by other musicians. They really deserve their own little moment on my podcast. So, and then, so I posted like 4 Moody Blues songs, and then at the end, if you'll note, there's a Traffic song, Stevie Winwood in Traffic, called Crying to Be Heard. The reason that's there, it's not happenstance. That was by design. I found that the Moody Blues and this song by Traffic, very poignant. Poignant at a time when I was having a really difficult time growing up. You know, I'm 15, 16 years old. And I'm in total turmoil. My mind is chaotic, not unlike today, and I'm really struggling to just to survive in some way, shape, or form. A lot of people talk about the 60s and getting high and listen to Grateful Dead or some other groups that kind of got themselves classified as psychedelia. But I found that when I was getting high, I really rather liked the Moody Blues and Traffic. And, you know, we all got our favorites, right? And the Moody Blues Question of Balance, On the Threshold of a Dream, and Nights in White Satin album. These were all really, there were always songs on there that spoke to me. So let me explain what that meant. Okay, imagine I'm 14, then 15 years old, and I'm experimenting with marijuana. When I'm 15 and not quite 16, I experiment with my next drug, which is, I believe, was LSD. So I went, pot was a gateway drug for me, opened up the universe of drugs to me. So here I am, 15 years old, and I try my first hit of LSD, and I was enamored with the sensation of this raised consciousness, this peek into the universe where I saw a connectedness between the picture on the wall and the wall, okay, between the car and the street, and between me and the universe. For Chris, it was Emerson, Lake, and Palmer. And I like Emerson, Lake, and Palmer. I really do. But they were not part of this kernel that, this popcorn kernel that I was focused on, such that it would eventually pop into whoever Ken Goldberg was going to be. Now, by the way, this is the origins that ultimately lead to addiction. But at the moment, it was really just an experimental lifestyle that was originating out of my turmoil. So I'm middle class completely. No, wasn't marginally middle class, was middle class. Grew up in a community called South Shore for 14 years of my life. South Shore, I didn't know at the time, living in it, this microcosm we called South Shore, I didn't know how much more prejudice and hateful it was, because for me, I was integrated in certain communities, which ultimately were not favored, right? So I've told you before, I got involved in a black street gang in grade school, things like that, right? I fought with the Catholic kids. Jump ahead to high school. It's all the hostilities were magnified suddenly. In high school, the how do you say, the discrimination, the prejudices, really is more the word. The prejudices became more magnified. It was more obvious. People openly disliking Jews or blacks or Hispanics or whatever it was, right? And then boarding school. Boarding school really was. I didn't think about talking about it. I was just going to start with kind of pre-addiction, but boarding school was an adventure, and I don't know what influence it played in my drug experimentation, but it certainly played a role in my evolution, because I arrived at this boarding school in New Hampshire, and I had no idea. I hadn't done any homework whatsoever. I've told you, like, I went to Thailand last year, didn't even know where Chiang Mai was, didn't know where the temple was in Chiang Mai. I just don't plan well. So I landed up in this boarding school. I didn't realize it was Methodist, or something. I mean, that there'd be a Methodist minister. I didn't know what a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant was. I really hadn't heard the term. And I get in this school, and out of 300 kids, there's 33 Jews, but there's only one Jew that's not from the Eastern United States. That was me. So I was odd for the Jewish community. I was odd for the school community. There were two other boys from Chicago. I think there were two brothers. I'm having trouble remembering, and they lived on the west side. Their father was a minister, and he had some affiliation with Marshall High School, which was an all-black high school. So these kids knew something about integration, but they were being raised in private schools, and here they were, and we got along, but they weren't immersed into the culture of the West Side, like I was immersed in the culture of the South Side. So, anyways, I thrashed through boarding school, and I mean, I thrashed. I physically fighting, um, emotionally, mentally, just, you know, from shortly after I arrived, maybe 30 minutes after I arrived, until I left there 1 year and 3 weeks later, I was pretty much at war with anything and everything. I don't even know, as I reflect, I don't know that there was a choice. I think the environment was so hostile to the kinds of concepts that we all think of today, human concepts, care, compassion, spiritual. There was this just it was completely absent. This was an environment void of humanity in so many ways. And so when I got thrown out, I didn't have any misgivings whatsoever, except that I knew my father was going to kill me. Anyways, I'm back. I come back to Chicago, and I found how to thrive finally. So up until the age of 15, I was wilting as a human being. I was wilting as a young boy. I was wilting as a Jew. I was wilting. Just, I'm just telling you, it's like failure to thrive is a term we use in the juvenile courts to talk about kids who are not functioning well because they're not getting something that we normally associate with thriving, with success, with coping. I had a very limited amount of those skills. But once I started using pot primarily, uh, I found that I didn't find, I felt like I had found my niche. Like here was something that I could do that most of you couldn't do. At the point where I started smoking weed in my neighborhood, South Shore, I was an anomaly. Now, when I moved to Hyde Park and met Sam Dorlock and all those people, Mark McDougall, whoever else, I found that pot was pretty mainstream, but not when I started. When I started, I lived in a different community, and I literally was called a degenerate by more than one friend. The word degenerate actually came up two different times, two different friends. You would have thought they'd have other monikers for me, but no, they didn't. So I got to Hyde Park and I began to use more drugs more often. Uh, I expanded the whole milieu. I embraced uppers, downers, sidewayers. Um, and now, as I look back and I look at those years, the what started out is kind of like I found my niche. I'm here. I am in my own little world. I found something that makes me feel good, makes me feel cool in a sense. And then, of course, as I look back, I'm saying that I'm sure that while drugs kept me from killing myself because it gave me some kind of outlet, at the same time, it probably was like nitrous for my craziness, my that chaos that reigned supreme was unharnessed. It was unleashed. I didn't have the misgivings I had had up until that point when I would open my mouth and I would get in trouble. But the kind of trouble I would get in was pretty much limited to the synagogue, the school, and home. I really wasn't. I didn't. I wasn't a viable participant outside of those three venues. Well, when I started using drugs regularly, I started running the streets and I began making friends hither and thither and going places where I could be a new problem. I could enter into a domain where the chaos I could create outside of me could reflect what was inside of me and spill over not onto teachers and fellow students, but right onto citizens of our society. And the explosions became more explosive and slightly more dangerous because now I was not in an environment that was regulated by adults. So when you're in school, no matter how much trouble you get into or how many fights you get into, there are adults on standby that will impose their authority on you. Same in the home, same at the synagogue. Uh, but when you run in the streets, it's all blurred. I mean, what is the role of the adults? Well, if they're your dealer or they're players, they're musicians, they were oftentimes people who didn't have much of a uh, moral compass themselves. Not that they were amoral, not that they were bad. It's just that their moral compass was twisted and bent, just like mine was. And here we are interacting with each other in sometimes superbly unhealthy ways. And now there were more weapons. There was just more of the bad stuff, more violence. Uh, the greater expectations, when I was a kid in school or the synagogue or at home, there were limitations, what was expected of me, Ken, just do your work, don't cause trouble, blah, 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 bing, bing, bang. You all know, you all went to school, you all went to participate in religious institutions, doesn't matter. But on the streets, uh, the limitations are, whatever's unfolding, you're going to find out what limitations are. Chicago Police Department became my primary limitation from the age of 15 till about 19. The Chicago Police Department became my obsessive uh, regulator. Okay. I was always keenly aware of their potential interference in my life, their presence. I mean, they just seemed to be everywhere. So you always had to be cautious, right? And the punishment they could mete out was no longer limited to go to your room, stand in the corner, we're holding you back a year. No, no. These guys were like, put the cuffs on, take you off to jail, lock you up. So I'm uh, but I didn't balance in the face of that kind of punishment. I didn't shirk. I didn't I didn't modify my behavior to avoid those consequences. I could look at those consequences and I could tell you unfailingly, I did not want to participate in jails, prisons, insane asylums. But despite the fact that I was getting closer and closer to it, I never modified my behavior. I just tried to be trickier, tried to be slicker, right? Now that I've been clean for many years, and I look back at um, those days and other days where drugs were of such import to me, uh, cocaine in the early 80s, very early 80s. I think, I went in treatment in 82. So for about a year, I think from 81 to 82, cocaine became a prominent part of my life. Up until then, drugs, I could take or leave. I was working with kids, man. I was working with kids in most of the 70s and part of the 80s. And, I had such dedication and commitment to the program of working with the kids that I could not allow anything like drugs or alcohol to interfere with my mission. Uh, and I would venture to say that the satisfaction I was getting from working with those kids was such that I didn't have a need for drugs and alcohol. I was getting the good stuff. I was in a now I had gone from a stroke deprived economy. That means I wasn't getting pats on the back for years to now I was in a very stroke plentiful environment. I got a lot of attaboys. People really seemed to appreciate what I was doing with the kids, except for the kids. So there was an abstinence of any abuse of drugs or alcohol during those years. I started locomotion, began it at 76. In 1981, I left the YMCA and went to work with my dad and took the extra money and time I now had, because I didn't make money as social worker, I didn't have time, and I invested in cocaine. So when I came out of treatment, it took some time, but eventually stability took hold, such that I was able to go to school really for the first time in my life. I was able to submit to authority for the first time, unquestioningly almost, right? Law school. I was so intimidated that I just, whatever they said, and if they said jump, I just jumped, because I didn't feel like I had any credentials to go, yeah, I don't think so, So I was a Mexican jump bean, baby. I was doing the deal, and I got through it. And then when you have clients, it's really hard. And I'm not saying it's impossible, because I know a lot of lawyers are drug addicts and alcoholics, or both, or maybe there's just one term, addict. As a lawyer, I had a calling. I had an obligation to be straight, to show up in court, to navigate my clients through these most difficult cases that they brought to me, because I had been there. I knew they needed my presence. So that was cool. That was cool. Then I moved to Dallas in 95, 96, and the whole thing fell apart shortly thereafter. So what happens is drugs, primarily methamphetamine. I was able to look at methamphetamine with a kind of a jaundiced but yet objective eye, and look at that and go, this is really helping me manage my emotions. This, for whatever reason, I was in such spiritual chaos, experiencing such spiritual bankruptcy, that the primary method, the tool which helped me manage my emotions, was methamphetamine. I can tell you that whatever dismay I felt emotionally, psychologically, when I was using meth, one hit of a pipe filled with methamphetamine mellowed me out immediately. I didn't care to vomit on you. I didn't care to wail on you. I just, whatever. It was kind of like whatever. I'll see y'all later. I'm busy. Right? So what is marvelous is that I can listen, the Moody Blues, the Early Traffic, the Doors. I can hear the poignancy in these songs, and with a level of maturation that was never available to me when I so was drawn to them as a kid. When I was a kid, the poignancy of these type of songs was such, it was like giving me CPR, right? Oh, look, these guys know depression. These guys know that sense of floundering. These songs tell me that I'm not the only one that knows that there's a connectedness from which I'm disconnected, right? So now I look at them and they're still poignant. They are. But I've long since abandoned the idea that I need them to tell me how I feel, or to have somebody put the stamp of imprimatur on the way I feel, that I'm not alone. I know now that every feeling I have, good, bad, indifferent, other people have felt, maybe all people have felt at some time or another. Every feeling I have, whether it's been rage or love or grief, run the gamut, doesn't matter. Most of you have probably felt everything. Circumstances and facts were different, emotions absolutely the same. And so I know I never sit around and go, oh, well, it's me. Only me knows the trouble I see. Yeah, no. You all see the trouble you see, you know. The problem is, how do we cope? How do we manage this emotional um, turmoil, man? Because even, I'll tell you, let me back up a second and tell you that, I was listening at an AA meeting, and they were talking about faith and fear, and that, if you have faith, faith is the absence of fear, fear is the absence of faith. And, since people got sober, they discovered God, and they find that when they aren't focused on God, they find themselves living in fear. Here's Ken's version. Fear is my constant companion. I have no illusions that fear will leave me for even a second. Okay. But I'm not troubled by that anymore. In my life, fear is it's in my DNA now. It's in my nerve system. It can come out at any time for a variety of reasons. But even with or without God, I've been given this opportunity to practice acceptance, whether it's fear or faith, joy or misery, whatever it is. I have some skill now, so that I don't have to smoke a bowl or take a hit of meth to manage that emotion anymore. Now I can look at that emotion. Fear is a good one. It's a powerful one. It's a toxic one. And if left unbridled, if it's left to run free, will destroy organically, will destroy you, as well as mentally and spiritually destroy you. I know this. I actually believe that fear will destroy your internal organs. That, when you keep absorbing fear and pushing it down, you'll probably, your pancreas or your liver or any number of other organs will go, oh man, overload, and they will rebel, and they will disease. So it's not just fear that's my constant, but that's probably number one. Anger is probably number two. I don't have positive emotions that are always with me. The negative ones are, but I come by it legitimately. I want to tell you that growing up in my environment, and knowing at the age of 4 or 5 that when my dad came home, the probability that I would be punished for something that day was pretty strong. So my body reacted to the very sound of my father's tires on the driveway. We had this driveway that went from the street to the back of the house, and my father would stop at about halfway towards the garage. He rarely parked in the garage. He would park more towards the front door. The very sound of his car pulling in the driveway, I always physically reacted. So I'm pretty sure I loaded up my nerves. Like they talk about, herpes never leaves you. It just hides out in your nerves until it's, for whatever reason, it's triggered. So I'm pretty sure that, years of living in that kind of fear, I'm sure it's all in my body, hidden out, waiting. So I say I come by legitimately, and then I've been in 1,000 other dangerous situations where fear was appropriate. And speaking of fear is appropriate, fear will get your ass out of trouble sometimes. It's fear when you go, oh, you know what? I'm not going to do that because I don't want to do that. I don't want to suffer the consequences. I'm afraid of what will happen if I do that. Okay. So fear can actually be harnessed for good. But as a general emotion, I get that it's not where I need to reside. Okay. And so over the years, though, I've been infused with fear. I mean, I bet we're operating at a, what do you call it, the cellular level for me. But what a gift to have been given through Buddhism, through 12-step, through friendship, to have come to a place where you go, oh, well, I recognize this fear, discomfort, impatience, greed, whatever it is, to look at it and go, oh, hello, this isn't the way I want to operate. I don't like feeling greedy. I don't like feeling like a thief. I don't like feeling like I'm harming anybody. So now it's like, well, what can I do? What can I do? And the choices of what I can do have grown exponentially, because I no longer have to worry about how you perceive my reaction and action. So before, doing something that seemed too nice or sweet, kind, had to be very measured, because what if you took that to be weakness and you tried to use that against me? So I would only react in those ways. In any way I thought might make me appear weak, I did it very measured. I had to be sure to do the calculus and decide that no harm was probable if I did this. Today, it's like I just act and react, and I'm not really worried. Part of that is because I have a gun. I don't have to worry about appearing weak. The others, I'm old. I don't care anymore what you think. I mean, there's a lot of reasons that I feel liberated, but to feel liberated, something, some path had to take me there. I was not on that path. I was on the path to spend my life, even in the absence of drugs and alcohol. I was on the path to live my life with lots and lots of negative feelings that ran unchecked, because I didn't have the skills. I had the background. Where were the adults when we were young? I don't know about y'all, but I had no freaking adults when I was young, until I was about 15 years old, and I met this ministry student, Lowell Callahan. I've talked about him, and he was the kind of first adult. So here was 15 years later, the first adult who just didn't seem to judge. And you all have, if you've been listening to my podcast for a period of time, my number one favorite thing about human beings is human beings who don't judge, who are not judgy. I can be friends with them. I can blurt out whatever. They're cool with it. Well, that was Lowell. Lowell was just, he had been around a lot of rough kids already. He had been around rough actors. He was a ministry student and then a minister. He just was very gracious. I never thought of him. He did once or twice come out of a bag on me. Of course, he had to come out of a bag on a lot of us for good reason. But in the main, he didn't do that at a time when everybody else was judging me, including the Chicago Police Department, okay, and my parents and the teachers and everybody else, right? So that was like Ole Ole home free or free parking or something, right? It was a space that for a period of time, a period of a year or two, I was able to begin, albeit it was cut short, it was aborted by life, but for a while, I was able to modify my behavior because I had an adult that I wanted to be able to interact with in a healthy way. And while he didn't judge me for being a burglar and a drug addict and all the other things that I was, a drug dealer, at the same time, as he recruited me into his program, I realized that I would be giving short shrift to him, that I would be disrespecting him if I was always high and unavailable when they needed me, when they called upon me. So it was a journey for absolute certain, right? And the Moody Blues were part of that journey. Traffic was part of that journey. Music was absolutely part of that journey. I mean, even the Grateful Dead for a while. But I just wasn't. It wasn't just hippy dippy for me because, as I say, as I entered my teens, I was so lost, so bereft of a spiritual wellness that but I was able to recognize the hippie community, the partaking of LSD, smoking a joint in a circle, gave me that joie de vivre, some reason to live, to participate, to interact, and to not recoil or shrivel at the possibility of being with other human beings. Because I was so socially awkward up until that point. I mean, I probably should not have gone to high school when I was 12 years old and 4 foot. I probably should. It probably was just a bad move on everybody's part. My part, my parents' part, the school system. I was too out of, but leaving me behind would have been traumatic because I had grown up with a lot of these kids who were slightly older than me. And had I been left behind, I would have been with kids I hadn't really grown up with, right? Or at least a new group. Some of them I had grown up with. Mandy Patinkin was a year behind me had I been set back, but we weren't in the same school. Mandy's my age, but when I was graduating grade school, he was going to be in grade school another year. So I did know some kids. I may be exaggerating, but in the main, by the time you get to the end of grade school, you're bonded with the student body. To have been held back at that point, for somebody to have said, "Yeah, he's not ready," and so here it is. Here we are. It's 2021. It's June 21st. I'm sorry, I should have said that at the beginning of the show. And this podcast began at 6 o'clock. And this podcast is referred to as Ken Goldberg's Law and Disorder. I'm Ken Goldberg. And if you're new, what happens is each day I usually put some links in the music, not for you to listen to while I'm podcasting, but after the show, hope you'll give a listen and understand why I selected them or just simply enjoy them. You don't have to understand shit. You just enjoy them. But the ones I picked today by the Moody Blues and the one by Traffic really, really, really were like, it was like they were, when you listen to them, it's like, oh my God, they're inside my head. Especially, of course, if you're on LSD, then you thought everything was inside your head. That was weird. I've said it here recently because I first talked about it in October with my friend when I visited him in California. The idea of going and sitting down in classrooms under the influence of LSD in my it was my third year of high school, fourth year of high school. It's my fourth year of high school. I was a junior. I was at Kenwood High School when I was taking LSD and going to school. And to sit there tripping and looking at the wall while the teacher's talking, looking at the cracks in the wall and seeing them breathe, right? And looking at my fellow students and they looked like caricatures. That was no music, didn't have iPods or whatever, then you couldn't sneak out. There was nothing like that. It was void of music in class. It was not the ambiance that most of us sought. Was it beneficial in some way to be sitting in school while tripping? Yeah, I have no idea. I don't offer an opinion on that. It seems like it was a bad bunch of decisions day in and day out, wherein I used LSD and then for a while glue in school, in class, taking LSD or in the alternative, huffing on some glue in the back of the class. So That's all kind of history, right? Yesterday's history, tomorrow's a mystery. All we got is today. So today, I thought, well, I'll show up and I'll share some of that with you. And if I said that all that before, and this was just a rehashing of events, well, I apologize. I didn't do that as intending to rehash. I did all this because I thought this is something I hadn't really put out there into the universe like this. So, but like some of you who are aging, you say something to people that you think is, kind of novel, and they go, I know you've told me that before. You told me that a couple of times. You're like, I did? Jesus. Did I tell you that I was coming home? I probably did tell you this. Here we are, exactly there's the junction I was just stuck at, right? Anyways, I was taking my friend Cynthia home after our walk, and her route takes me by this house, and there's this beautiful red Corvair. I think it's a convertible. I don't remember at the moment. And, it was a couple of weeks ago, and I marveled at it. I said, look at that Corvair. It's a beautiful shape. Oh, my word, And she says, yeah, you said the same exact thing the last time you saw it. And I was stunned. I had no recall of seeing that car and making this exclamation about how cool that was. I saw the car recently, and I thought, that's okay. I'm surprised we don't have brain damage from the glue. Kathy, how do you know we don't have brain damage from the glue? The glue was probably the most devastating to our organs. So Kathy mentioned glue. By the way, her brother introduced me. He was the first guy I ever saw who bought glue in a can. Normally, airplane glue is bought in a tube, and you build model airplanes with it. And then you pour some in a brown paper bag or plastic bag, but you got to be careful because the bags will leak. And once you get glue on your pants, it's never coming out. Anyways, it burn your throat and make you all wacky and stuff. And I ran into Gary, Kathy's brother, coming down the street from I don't know where. And hey, what you doing? He was with this guy Hillbilly, and he opened the bag and he had a canister, a can of glue, airplane glue, and he said, "We're going to go to." He was going on his way home to sniff glue, and I was like, "Have fun." He told me later he was walking on the ceiling. I don't doubt it. So with glue, I sniffed glue on the 18th floor of the Powhatan in Chicago, and I looked out. I had a view of downtown and the lake, and I remember thinking, man, that's cool, man. That's where I belong. If I go through the bathroom door, I was in a bathroom, go through the bathroom door into my bedroom, it's like, oh man, there's just nothing there, man. My house, my parents, this would suck. The city, that's where I belong. And I thought about opening the window and going out and warning Will Robinson, danger. That is not a good plan. I didn't do it. Rose, I would have reacted when I would react when the garage door opened when my late husband came home. Oh no, I said too much. I take it you mean that you had a negative reaction when he came home. I don't know all of Rose's story, but if I understand correctly, she didn't have a great marriage. I guess maybe she's alluding to maybe she wasn't supposed to tell us she didn't have a great marriage. I guess if I don't say anything, maybe you think she reacted with joy when the garage door opened. I don't know. But if she didn't want me to tell you that, she should open the door to that topic, right? Anyway, 6:44. It's time to go, kids. It's time to go. I got to do metta, loving kindness. And that's how I end every show. Velvet joined us seemingly as usual. I didn't know that. I didn't notice her there. So Velvet, greetings from Velvet. As to Father's Day, I hope those of you who are here, who are fathers, had a good Father's Day. Or perhaps you had a good grandfather day because you had daughters and your daughters had kids. I don't know. My daughters remembered it was Father's Day probably around 8 o'clock last night, and they're 14 hours ahead. So it's actually, they remembered on Monday to text me. That was pleasant. We exchanged some pleasantries. So, all right. I bring my hands before my heart. I close my eyes. I bow my head. I take a deep breath. So may I think to myself, and may you think to yourselves. May I be happy, healthy, free from harm, free from anger, anxiety, and fear. May my mother and father, and then my living relatives and my friends, may they be happy and healthy, free from all forms of harm. May they too find a path that guides them to a life of peace and comfort. May those persons that I harbor any bad feelings towards, ill will, resentments, let me let go just for the moment, long enough to send goodwill. May those persons be happy, healthy, free from harm, living their lives, peace, comfort, and joy, and to all living beings throughout the entire universe, humans and non-humans. May they now be the recipient of our collective metta. May they know happiness, good health. May they know they are safe. May they be comfortable. May they be at peace. Satu, Satu, Satu. Hi, Mark and Ann. Thank you. Thanks, Joan, and Rose, and Rachel, and Kathy, and anybody else, Chris and Becky, and Sam, if he stuck around. But Sam's usually vociferous, so I would think he would have said more. So I think if you made a comment in the comment section, you got a reaction. Now that's funny. That's funny, Mark. I'm glad you became unglued. You know who introduced me to glue? Should I let you take a guess and type in the name of the person that introduced me to glue? Well, we don't have time. It's 6:47, but put one up on the board for Preston Roberts. You know, I had never thought about using glue until he introduced me to it. Told me what a great cheap high it was. It lasted a couple of months and then I got out. All right. Thank you guys. Y'all have a good time. If you were on YouTube, you wondered, I was on Facebook while I was on YouTube with you. But since nobody been showing up on YouTube, I'm not that worried about you. So to YouTubers, adios. Back over to Facebook.